Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Ayin Tet. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. Hold on, here we go. Here it is. Okay, in the Mishnah that we saw yesterday, we noted that if the government takes away the donkey that someone rented, the owner does not have to provide an alternative donkey, as the owner can say that the donkey that the person rented is right in front of the person who rented it, and it happens to be controlled by the government, and you probably don't want to interfere, but you have access to it. So as we pick up at the two dots on the first wide line of Ayin Chet Amabet, the Gemara is going to clarify the situation with the machlokas between Rab and Shmuel, debate between Rab and Shmuel. So we say first wide line, very beginning of the wide line, we'll quote the language from our Mishnah. Ocean Ases Angaria, or if it was commandeered by the king's soldiers. Omer lo, the person who owned the animal can say to the renter, Hare shalcha lefanecha, what you got is in front of you. So Amar Rab lo shanu el ba'angaria choseres. When we say that the person can say that the animal's in front of you, that's where the animal is expected to be returned by the soldiers and returned, on some level in a more rapid approach. Avalangaria she'enu choseres. But if in fact it was put into service and it's never going to be returned, or maybe not going to be returned immediately, chayav lahamid al lo chamor. Then the owner has to set up another animal because that was the agreement. You agreed to supply an animal. Now you don't have any animal that's being supplied. You got to do it. So Bangaria choseres. Let's take a look at Tosfos. Third to last Tosfos on the page. That when you get it returned, well, why is it that you're obligated to pay? Because you're going to be able to do your work once it gets returned. And even though that will cause the person to do their work more slowly and to be delayed in it, in order to avoid the delay, we're not going to force the owner to give an alternative animal. Kamosha Hivrika, just as we saw with Hivrika, right? Hivrika was, we had a machlokas, whether it was some kind of worms that infect the leg, or some kind of blindness that is not complete, but is it essentially slows the animal down. Ocean, it's osha titata, or if it becomes nishtatata, or if it becomes crazy, shemis acheres. In all those situations, it causes delay. Nami b'malachto, that also causes delay in its work. Below chayshina, and in those situations, we say it's tough luck on the renter. So, because again, you're able to do it. The Ritva here notes that this is assuming that we're paying for the job. We're not renting by the day. If you're renting by the day, obviously, the days that you don't have it, you would not have to pay. Now, at least that's according to some Rishonim, and that seems to make a lot of sense to me. Okay, so that is Shmuel's attitude. That is Rav's attitude. Rav says that the situation where we're not going to force the owner to give another animal is where we expect the animal to be returned. Shmuel Amar. Shmuel says, Bein Angaria Choseres, Bein Angaria She'eno Choseres. Actually, it doesn't make a difference how soon you expect the animal to be returned. The question is, Im B'derech Halicha Nitla. Is the animal going in the direction that the person is trying to go in anyway? Meaning, if all of my work is going to be in this area, then who cares how long it will be until the animal gets returned? I'm going to be. I'm here. It's not good. It's not leaving this neighborhood. I can wait, and whenever it comes back, again, even she'enu chazeres implies that it will eventually come back. It's just delayed even further. So then we can say Omer lo hare shelcha lefanecha. Then it's yours. Meaning, as Rashi explains, Omer lo hare shelcha lefanecha. This is the third to last Rashi on Ayin Chedem Bet. Shekain derech angaria notelchom roshel zeh umahalek ba'aleha akareha. That what would often happen is that the armed forces would take the animal and they would use it, and the owner would travel after the animal. The kol chamor shepogea bo rishon nolo, and each animal, as they ran into another animal, they'd realize, hey, this animal has now exhausted itself by carrying our loads. Now we're going to take a new animal, and then umaxer lo as shalo, and then they would return the original animal. This essentially was a way in which one can imagine that it would be easier for the armed services to commandeer animals, because they would not be commandeering them permanently. It would be for an unspecified amount of time, but whenever they found the next animal, so then they would switch the load to the new location and the new animal. And so as a result, people would get their animal back. They just don't know how long. And then the second guy, this owner of the second animal, he'd follow the group until until a third animal was found. Hilkach Omerlo Hoel va'af mazalcha garam skor chamor acher. So look, the bottom line is, it's your luck that is going to cause this to happen. So go, that is requiring you to potentially hire another animal. So go after it until you run into another animal. You'll be okay. So the point is if you're going in the same direction. So if we take a look at the previous Rashi, in B'derech Hilchos Nitla Shahangaria Molichta L'derech Shahaya Zeh Rotzel Halik. So the person who was trying to get his stuff from place A to place B, if it's going from place A to place B, so then as a result, he can just wait with his stuff and get and it'll all work out in the end, because he'll take the animal back, and he'll get he'll deal with the trying to carry it in the interim while he's waiting. But at the end of the day, the animal will be able to carry much of the way from place A to place B. And so as a result, that's why we're going to be okay. But if you don't take it in the right direction, well then, if the army is taking it in the wrong direction, well then you're gonna go somewhere else. Now, I will note, as I note on the screen, Tosos cites Rabbeinu Hananel that says that in the direction means that the government is only looking for animals in the street. So it's the renter's bad luck that he was not in his home. But if the government is looking for animals even in homes, then it was the then it was the owner's bad luck that led to it being taken. So the owner would need to replace it. I need to change that word. This should say owner right here. So I'll have to fix that after the daf. Okay, so that is Tosfos's understanding of it. And again, Rashi says it sort of takes it very literally. If the soldiers are going in the right direction, then you're okay, and you don't need to replace it. If the soldiers are going in the wrong direction, that's where Shmuel says you need to replace it. So Meisvei, we're going to ask a question to Shmuel's understanding, because listen to this brisa and see whether you can figure out how this disagrees with Shmuel. Because because if you have an animal that you're renting, the donkey that you're renting, and it either becomes hivrika, which again we saw means partially blind, or its legs infested with worms, so as a result it's not going to be able to work as efficiently as it would have, or it goes crazy, and so as a result again, it's not going to be able to work as efficiently. So Omer Lo, the owner can still say, Haresha Chalafanecha, look, you've got the animals right here. Do what you need with it. Mesa Oshanases Angaria. However, if in fact it dies or it's put into service, Chayav La'amid Lo Chamor. Well, then you need to give another animal. So 1 second. So Bishlam Alarab. So where's the question here? So that's a good question. So the Gemara explains. Bishlam of the Rav lo kasha. It makes sense according to Rav. There's no question here at all. Kan ba'angaria choseres, kan ba'angaria she'enu choseres. That when we say that you don't have in our Mishnah, when we say that you don't have to serve, you don't have to give another animal, that's because it's going to be returned right away. And where in this brisa we say that you have to give another animal, that's because it's not going to be returned right away. El Shmuel kasha. But according to Shmuel, he doesn't make this distinction. So isn't this difficult? And Tema, now 1 second, you're probably thinking exactly what I was thinking when I read this Gemara the first time. Tema Shmuel Nami lo kasha. 1 second. Why it should not be a problem according to Shmuel either, because kansha b'derech halichasan nitla, v'kan shelo b'derech halichasan nitla. We could just make a similar distinction. He does make a distinction. His distinction is whether or not the animal's being taken in the right direction or not. And so we'll say that our Mishnah, which says that you don't have to replace it, is where the animal is being taken in the right direction. And here, this Brisa, where it says that you're not, that you have to replace it, is talking about where it was being taken in the wrong direction. But that doesn't work, the Gemara points out, because listen to what the end of that Brisa says. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar specifically says, if it's being taken in the right direction, Omer lo then the owner could say, here's your animal right in front of you. So as a result, he doesn't have to replace it. But if it's not being taken in the right direction, then you do have to replace the other animal. And if that's what the Seifa says, if that's the end of the opinion, that's Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's opinion, well, that implies that the first opinion disagrees with that. Well, 1 second, if the first opinion disagrees with that, that cannot be, and the second opinion is Shmuel's opinion, well, then the first opinion must be disagreeing with Shmuel. So Miklal, that the Tanakama lo shiny hachlei, that the Tanakama doesn't make this distinction. So Amar Lach Shmuel has a couple of possible answers. Lav mi ika Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. 1 second. I can hold. I don't have to agree with every Tana. I agree with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Dekai Kavasi. He says exactly like I do. Ana da Amri ka Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So I can agree with him. So that's totally sufficient. Alternatively, Kula Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Really, this entire brisa is Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Really, the brisa should be saying the following: Hasocher behivrika if you rent an animal and it becomes partially blind or becomes crazy, Omer lo, the owner can say, your animal that you rented is in front of you, Mesa Oshanas Angaria, but if in fact it dies or is taken by the armed forces, then you have to give another animal. But what are we talking about? So again, now the end of this brisa that we just quoted with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's opinion is clarifying the first part of the brisa. Shelo b'derech halikasa nitla, aval nitla b'derech halikasa, omer lo harei shalcha lefanecha. So as a result, it's basically making clear that the entire brisa divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. That's what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says. Shahaya Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, because Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar would say, Im b'derech halichua nitla, harei shalcha lefanecha, omer lo harei shalcha lefanecha, ve'im lo chayav la'amid lo chamor. So again, it's basically, we've just reread this brisa to make it all Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and all consistent with Shmuel. But 1 second, does that
what
really
was the kasha to Shmuel? What was I'm not sure what the kasha to Shmuel was.
Kasha to Shmuel was that it looked like the Tanakama in this brisa disagrees with him. That was the kasha to Shmuel. And so the first answer
in what way?
What?
In what way did he disagree?
Well, because the Tanakama said that that you have to replace the animal, and Shmuel says that you don't have to replace the animal unless it's going in the wrong direction. And the end of the brisa again said that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar makes the distinction that Shmuel does, which implies that the Tanakama of that brisa doesn't make the distinction that Shmuel does. So as a result, the Tanakama of that brisa clearly disagrees with Shmuel. So how can doesn't Shmuel want to agree with the Tanakama. After all, usually when we have a machlokas between a Tanakama and others, there will the halachas like the Tanakama, because the Tanakama is all the rabbis, other than the ones that are named in the Sefer of a brisa. And so as a result, doesn't, so that's the question. And the answer is either no, that Shmuel only can agree with Shimon ben Elazar, and that's sufficient because he can just paskin like Shimon ben Elazar. Or alternatively, the second answer is that to reread the entire brisa, to have the entire brisa be consistent like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And so now we're going to ask, how can we have the entire brisa be like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar? Because listen to the beginning part of the brisa. What did we say in the beginning price of brisa? Much is mokmalo Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar v'hakatani reisha. We said in the beginning of the brisa, and now we just for people know where we're up to. We are on Ayin Tet Amud Aleph, and we are now. Vaha is the last word on the fourth line of Ayin Tet 79a. On the fourth line, Vaha Kitani Reisha Hasocher Esachamor Vehivrika Shinishtatata. We said that if the person rents the animal and it either is becomes partially blind, or again it gets the worms in the legs, or nishtata, or becomes crazy, Omer lo hareishal chalafanecha, then the owner is able to say that what you have is in front of you. The ilu Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Amar, and if you're going to tell me that that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, what about the following? We have the following statement. That if you rent an animal, rent a donkey in order to ride it, and it then becomes blind or crazy, you need to give another donkey. So here we have another statement of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that says you have to replace it. And then we have the first price, the brisa that we just quoted before, saying that where Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is now saying you don't have to replace it. That's another inconsistency. So it can't be that that the original brisa was all Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So Amar Rabba bar Barafuna, pretty much an obvious answer, Lirkovala Shiny, that actually riding on the animal is different from hiring an animal to carry your loads. And Rashi explains. Top Rashi, again, Ayin Tet Amud Aleph, Shema Tipol Taktav. Maybe the animal will fall underneath you. That's not a good situation. If the animal, falls underneath you, begesher, while you're crossing a bridge, you definitely don't want the animal to make a misstep because it's blind or crazy when you're trying to go over a bridge. Oh, Shetashlichenu. Or maybe it'll throw you into one of the pits that's around. So as a result, we are very concerned that a blind or crazy donkey, when you're trying to ride it, is going to be terrible for you. And so as a result, if you said that you wanted to ride the donkey, not just use it to carry your loads, well, then the owner of the donkey is going to have to replace it if it goes crazy or gets the partial blindness or the worms in the legs. Okay, so Amarav Papa Uchlis Alahadami. And if you are carrying glass, well, then it's just like you hire the donkey to ride it. Because again, you can't deal with any kind of jostling. These kind of crazy or blind animals, or again, infested animals, are going to have a shakier ride. And so as a result, it's going to damage it. And so as a result, if you told the owner of the animal that you're planning to carry glass and you paid the price of for a glass carrying chamor, then you will get an alternative chamor if it turns out that the chamor that you have has this blindness issue, the worms issue, or goes crazy. Okay.
But where does this point of the carrying glass come from? It's out of left field. He just brings this in here.
Yeah, it's brought here because we just gave the answer that riding is different, and so we want to clarify that it's not strictly because of somebody being because of our sensitive bottoms, so to speak, but rather it's because of the item being sensitive that is on the animal, and so as a result, Rav Papa is clarifying that it's not like you can say, oh, well, all kinds of load carrying donkeys are equal. No, it's not. That's not the case. If you specifically hire a load carrying donkey for glass, you need a really high quality one, and that's going to be it's going to be equivalent to you having said that you wanted to ride it. So that's the point. It's not, like I said, you're absolutely right. It's a just a related ruling, but it's an important related ruling because we don't want to finish this issue and have people go away thinking that the only distinction we're making is between whether a person's riding or whether there's a stuff riding on the animal. No, it's not just that distinction. The distinction is actually, is what's riding on the animal sensitive? And if it's sensitive, then we have to be more careful, and you need a better animal. And of course, if you're an animal renter, you should charge more for those situations because you're providing a greater service. Okay, so now we're going to have a case in which the donkey
Well, this has
died.
to be explicitly stated in advance.
Oh,
He
100%,
can't
100%. That's
decide that he's gonna put glass on the donkey after he's already
100%.
rented it.
Correct. You can't make that is part of the information that needs to be shared up front. Just like when you go to the post office today, you have to tell them, is there anything fragile in the thing? They ask, exactly, they should ask. That you need to let them know. Otherwise, they're not going to protect it. Similarly here, you need to absolutely let them know. Otherwise, they're not going to protect it. So 100% you need to be upfront about it. Okay, so now what happens if the donkey dies halfway through a trip? So Amar Rav bar Rav Huna Amar Rav. So it's said in the name of Rav, Hasocher Sachamor Lirkov Aleha. If you hire a donkey to ride it, Umeza Lo B'Chatzi Adera, and it dies halfway through, Nozein Lo Scharo Shachatzi Adera. Well, you got the benefit of getting halfway on your journey, and so as a result, you have to pay the owner the fee for getting halfway. V'ein lo alav ela taromos, and you have some complaints against the supplier of the donkey, but really, you don't have any. You're not going to get any money about it. So you have a justified disappointment in the arrangement, but you do not have a monetary complaint. So Hekidami, what exactly is the case? If the person who rented the animal is going to have no problem renting another animal, taromus mayavite. Well, what's the complaint? At the end of the day, you got where you're going. You paid about what you were going to pay anyway. What are you complaining about? And if in fact it's going to be hard to find another animal to rent, agra baila mesavle. 1 second. So then why are you having to pay anything? You wanted to go from New York. Yeah, you wanted to go from Washington, D.C. to New York, and the animal died in Philadelphia, but you didn't want to be in Philadelphia. You wanted to be in New York. So the olam delosh. No, really, we can say that it's going to be difficult to find another animal to rent. Umishum de amrle. But the owner can say to the renter, ilu bois lemese ad hacha lav agra bois lemesav. If you wanted to get to this point, if you wanted to get to Philadelphia, well, then you would have had to pay to get here. And so as a result, you need to pay the fee that would have cost you to get to Philadelphia. Now, Tozos asked the pretty much obvious question. If we take a look at top Tozos, Ayin Tenem and Aleph. Tema, I don't understand. It's a wonder. He didn't get to where he wanted to go. He didn't get to New York. Lamese, to buy Lamese, where he wasn't wanted to be taken. So Lama Yetain Lo Schar. Why is he having to give anything? So Tosos makes an important, two possible important clarifications. V'yesh lomer dehadika amar la'olam delo shchiach la'aguri, that when we say that you can't find an alternative renter animal, hainu lefi otan damim. That's when you can't find another animal for the exact same price, so that you get there for the same amount that you were paying. That you were renting it from this other guy. Aval bitvei porta, but a little bit more, yimatze, then you will find. So lahaskir, in order to rent. So you have some benefit, some material benefit for having gotten here, because are you going to have to pay a little more overall? Yes, but you got a full benefit of having gotten to this point. Lekach. To this lekach noten lo chatzi scharo. So therefore, you have to pay. You got halfway, you have to pay halfway. Ve'ein tzarach lepachot hamaskir miskaro mashazen noten ata yoter ma'at. And you don't get to take out from the payment to the first guy the additional payment that you are going to have to pay mikan ve'elo from this point on. Kevan dehu honest. Nobody wanted this animal to die. The owner most definitely does not want this animal to die. And so as a result, it's just bad luck that it died while you were on your journey. So we're not going to force you to put the entire liability on the owner of the animal. Inami, or alternatively, we're looking at it from the wrong direction. That really, this was all, we're now assuming nobody traveled for pleasure back then. Every trip was a business trip. So inami kikon yocha limkor skuraso b'makom shemes hachamor v'yarviach ba. So you would be able to. We're dealing with a situation where, yes, you wanted to come to New York to the diamond district in order to be able to sell your diamond, where you'd be able to easily sell it and get a good price, etc. But and so as a result, everything was going to be wonderful. Or maybe actually, based on the end of the Tosfos, I should have done it the other way. Let's see, I don't know what has lots of sellers in Philadelphia. You wanted to sell your beautiful replica of the Liberty Bell. Exactly. Thank you. And you wanted to sell it in New York, where there are fewer sellers of Liberty Bells. And so as a result, you would have gotten a better price. But v'yesh sochrim harbe she'ein mevi'in schorasan elad kan. But you ended up in Philadelphia, and there are lots of people who have Liberty Bells for sale in Philadelphia. So, but nonetheless, you got to somewhere where you can still make a profit. So as a result, you have to pay half the price. We're going to sort of reduce the amount that you pay, because you're not getting the full benefit of going to a place where you would have been able to sell for a slightly higher price, but you're still able to sell for a reasonable price. And so as a result, you still have to pay something. So those are the two approaches of Tosfos. Either it focuses on the fact that you do have some savings on the trip that you are going to continue, or that you can accomplish most of what you wanted to accomplish in the place where the animal died to leave you off. So in any event, that's the point. The point is that we're not going to say that in the broad sense, if the animal doesn't get you to where you're going, you would potentially not have to pay anything. And the question is the circumstances such that you did get a real benefit? And Tosfos highlights how you could have gotten a real benefit. Okay, so that's the situation. So now question number 2.
So the owner doesn't lose anything, right?
The owner
loses he loses animal, but besides that,
correct. The owner loses his animal, and he gets paid what he was going what an ordinary trip from Washington D.C. to Philadelphia would ordinarily get paid. So,
but he doesn't get paid any extra.
No, he doesn't get paid any extra, for sure not. So hechidami. So now we're going to.
This sounds a little bit reminiscent, or maybe in the opposite way, of the machlokas between Rav Dosa and Tana Kama. If a person accomplishes half the work, and does he get paid or not? Not exactly, but
yes, there are definitely echoes of that machlokas. You're absolutely right. And here we're effectively saying that that the owner has the on some level has the upper hand. But again, we're dealing with a situation where there were no special circumstances. If the renter had said, "Listen, I need to get to New York by tomorrow, and I need an animal that can get me there by tomorrow," and paid accordingly, then we might have a different answer here. So it's important to remember that, and that's, I think, what Tosfos is hinting at, that we do care about what the goals are of the renter, and if the goals of the renter are being accomplished versus not being accomplished.
Oh, so that would be, if he has to get there by tomorrow, that might be a davar avud.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. Exactly. All right, so hechidami. So now one more clarification of the case that we're dealing with, where the animal dies halfway. So ida amar le chamor stam. If the renter told if the owner told the renter that he was going to just supply a donkey, and that which means that no matter what happens, you're going to get a donkey. Well, then then you got to give him another donkey. Ida amar le chamor zeh. And if in fact the owner had told the renter that he was giving him this particular donkey, well then if there's enough money left over, meaning if you can sell the carcass of the animal and replace it and buy some kind of cheap donkey, yikach, well then let him buy the replacement donkey. So as a result, why should the Rav say that the person has a complaint? There's no complaint. He should be totally fine. Well, yes, actually, you're not right, because tzricha, this is a necessary statement. Because if in fact there was not sufficient money to buy a replacement donkey, a cheap replacement donkey, well then you cannot. Then the renter would still have the complaint, because he's not going to get to where he wanted to go. So, one second, so let him use the proceeds of selling the dead donkey in order to rent a replacement. Yiskor, let him rent it, and then again, in the end, the renter will get to where he wanted to go. He won't have to pay anything extra, and everybody and he should be totally happy. So what kind of complaint does he have? So Rav Latame, Rav follows his own reasoning that says that you cannot just rent. The Amar Rav lo machlinan karna. We don't allow the renter to consume the owner's principal. The itmar, as we said, hasocher esachamor. If you rent a donkey, and it dies halfway through, Amarav, if you can buy a replacement with the value of the carcass, well then yikach, then you can do it. Because at the end of the day, when you get to where you're going, when the guy gets to New York, the donkey will go back to the ownership. The new donkey, which is a cheap donkey, but it will still be a donkey, it will go to the owner of the original donkey. Yeah. So that would be fine, because he still ends up with some kind of capital, Liskor. But if you only get the money that is sufficient to rent a donkey to get you from Philadelphia to New York, Al Yiskor, you're not allowed to rent it, because the value of that carcass belongs to the original owner.
And what right does this person have to cut up the carcass and sell it? It's not his carcass. It's not his animal. He's renting it.
No, so let's clarify. So that he's renting the animal. And when you rent an animal, you are effectively like its owner for the entire period of the rental. And so as a result, if in fact you're trying to accomplish the goal that the owner was providing the animal for, then you're okay. Meaning the owner owes you the rest of the ride from Philadelphia to New York. And if you can accomplish that ride through selling the carcass, it is assumed as a part of the agreement that you should go ahead and do so. But the question is, do we apply that in all circumstances? Do we apply that even if you could only rent an animal to get from Philadelphia to New York? Or do we say that no, you have to buy an animal that will take you from Philadelphia to New York, so that way you have something to return to the owner of the original animal? And Rav says you need to be able to return something to the owner of the original animal. But Shmuel says, no, you can even rent. And b'mai kamiflagi, what is it that they're really arguing about? Rav savar lo machlinan karna, ushmuel amar savar machlinan karna. That Rav says that when you rent something, you cannot use up the principal associated with that item, and so as a result, you need to give back either the carcass or you need to give an animal back. You can't use the value of the carcass to get to as a rental payment, because then the original owner gets nothing. And Shmuel says, no, you can use up the owner's principal in order to accomplish the purpose for which you hired the animal. So Meisvei. So now in second, is we're going to ask, doesn't this brisa could contradict Rav? So let's take a look. Yavish ha'ilan oniktas. The Rashi explains that we're talking about a situation. If we take a look at Rashi, Yavish ha'ilan, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 lines down, 15 lines down in the narrow lines. Yavish ha'ilan. Misha mishkon ilan lechavero. If I provide as a pledge this tree, hihani mashkanta desura, following the mashkanta desura situation. Now, that requires you to remember back to the last parak where we learned about mashkanta desura, and thankfully, during the right preparation, I was able to go back and look and remind myself of it. So I'm not asking you to remember. So mashkanta desura situation is the following. I lend you $1,000. Well, actually, you lend me $1,000 because I was giving you my tree. And then I give you my tree. And I say to you, listen, this tree produces the most delicious fruit. And you will be able to eat and sell, plenty of fruit. Let's do the following. Every year, it produces about $100 worth of fruit. And so I'm going to sell. And so what I'll do is, instead of paying you back, every year that you eat from the tree, reduce my debt to you by $100. Okay. And so as a result, some years it'll produce $300 worth of fruit. Some years, maybe it might only produce $50 of fruit, but we agree up front that you're going to take off $100 every year for the fruit that it produces. Totally permitted. That is not considered a ribis transaction. That is a permitted transaction. That's called mashkanta desura. So I've now given you this tree for that you're supposed to take $100 off every year for 10 years, and so that way it will cause me to not have to pay. But yavish ha'ilan onixus. Now it dried up. So we go back into the Gemara, and it dried up, or it got chopped down. Well, so now that's a tough situation, because I had given you this tree in order for you to be able to take the fruit, because I expected to get the tree back at the end of the 10 years. And now I'm getting nothing back. So what are we supposed to do? So Shnei and Asurimbo, neither of them are able to do anything with the tree. Ketzad Yasa, what should be done? Yilakach bo karka. You buy other land with that tree. V'hu ochel peros. And then, Stan, you can eat the fruit from that until you finish the value of the fruit that I owe you, the amount of the debt that I have for you. So in second, well, in second, I'm never going to get this tree back, because what happens at Yovel? I have to give at Yovel, this tree which is purchased, this land that was purchased, I have to give it back to the original owner, the Kakal Yakarna. So in fact, my principal has been totally consumed. And if Rav tells us that you're not allowed to consume the principal, how could that be? That's totally inconsistent with the conclusion of this anonymous brisa, which Rav needs to agree with. So no, we can actually answer this. So listen to this, because the clarification is the following. We're talking about where it was sold, the land was sold for a period of 60 years. And it turns out that if in fact you sell, even though ordinarily when I purchased land from you in the land of Israel in the olden days when there was Yovel, so I would take the land from you, and at Yovel, I would have to give it back to you. But if I explicitly purchase it for 60 years, then I get it for those entire 60 years, even though Yovel may come in the middle. And so as a result, that's totally fine. So maybe we're talking about where it was purchased for an extended period of time. The Amar of Chista, Amar of Katina, because after all, Rav Chista said in the name of Katina, Minayin Lamocher Sadeh Lashishim Shana. How do I know that one who sells a field for 60 years, She'ena Chozeres B'Yovel, that it doesn't go back in Yovel? Shenemar Va'aretz Lo Simacher Litzmisus. You're not allowed to sell land forever. Okay, meaning that if you try to sell land forever, then it gets returned at Yovel. So Misha Ein Sham Yovel Nitzmeses. When they're, when you don't have it, so then Yovel remains. The Yesham Yovel Einam Nitzmeses. And when there is Yovel, so then there's not going to be you can't sell for forever. So Yatzazu. So what gets excluded? This case of a sale for 60 years. Because even without Yovel, it doesn't go on forever. So as a result, that may be what we're talking about. But that still doesn't work, the Gemara points out, because you probably thought of this also. Looking matu shitin shnin, at the end of 60 years, kahadra ara lamar, you have to return the land, the kakal yakarna. And so as a result, the owner of the original tree that got chopped down or that's dried up is never going to get paid. He's never going to get his principal back. So Ella Hakabamayaskin. So it must be talking about the following. Bisman she'ena Yovel noheg. We're talking about when Yovel was not operative, because Yovel is only operative when a majority of the Jewish people live in the land of Israel. And Hakinami Mistabra. And actually, maybe we can even say that this makes sense and that this Brisa is actually consistent with Rab, and more consistent with Rav than with Shmuel. Because if you were to tell me that it was the time that Yovel would operate, umachlinan karna, and as a result, the owner's principal is going to get eaten up, well then, why not just sell the tree and chop it into bits and let the and Stan can take the value of the tree against my loan, right? I owed Stan $1,000. He had the tree for 3 good years, so now I owe him $700. Let him chop up the tree, use it for fuel, and that'll be the payment of the remaining $700. So after all, he doesn't need to give me back anything. He can consume that. No, because imishum ha lo kasha. No, that wouldn't actually create any kind of difficulty, for Shmuel, because zimnin deshalmo shnei mashkanta mikama yovel. Because sometimes the pledge will end ahead of yovel. Inami dematu lezuze, or the money will be, it's going to be significant that I owe. Uparikla arba v'chame shnin mikame yovel, and he'll have to pay it off 4 or 5 years ahead of time. And so as a result, the Brisa can be understood to be completely consistent with Shmuel, that it's permissible to consume an owner's principal, even though we're saying that you have to buy a land with it. And so as a result, it can be that the whole thing gets consumed before it gets returned. So
why are you saying that the owner doesn't get it back? According to this kasha we had to Rav, in Yovel, the owner gets the property back, right? So how is it being consumed?
The original owner gets the property back. Remember that when I gave Stan a tree, okay, that tree dies. And now we say that Stan is going to take the proceeds of the sale of that tree and buy new property from which he's going to eat the fruit, and I will get the property at the end. But the problem is that that property that he buys from some third party, that at Yovel goes back to that third party. It's the third party that gets it back, not me. He's not buying the property from me. He's buying it on my behalf, and he's going to eat from that property. So that's why it's a problem to Shmuel. It's a problem to Rav.
Original owner?
Yes, it goes back to the original owner.
Oh, it's a new owner. I missed that somewhere. So that
exactly.
He's buying it from somebody else. He's using
correct.
Oh, somehow that was not obvious in this whole discussion.
So,
I thought we were the original owner. Original owner of the tree.
No. He's buying the Stan is buying land from a third party and using the produce from that land to work off my loan, and then I will get the land back at the end. But the problem is that I don't get the land back at the end because it gets all consumed. And so as a result, that's the reason why.
The
Okay.
land gets consumed. We mean that the tree was consumed,
Well,
right?
the land gets consumed because I don't get any of it. Entire tree, none of that principal comes back to me. Exactly. All right,
Because he
because the
used
land
it.
goes back to the third party original
Right.
owner.
Okay. So the original owner of the tree gets nothing back because there was another transaction.
Correct.
The borrower chopped down the tree, got the pro. He bought the land to work the land to pay off the loan, and
Exactly.
in the end, he no longer has the land from which he can work the land to pay back the original owner of the tree.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. So now, okay. So again, because the pledge ends before Yovel, or the borrower pays the remaining debt before Yovel, so as a result, that's a reason that even Shmuel would agree not to let the tree be fully consumed. All right. So now the Gemara is going to quote 4 brisas that relate to these topics and give us 4 rules that are, again, relating to various rentals, 2 for boats, 2 for animals. So, Tan Rabbanan, Asocher Esasfina, the Tava La Bechatzia Derech, you rent a boat and it sinks halfway. Rabbi Natan Omer, Im Natan Lo Yitol, the Im no Lo Natan Lo Yitain. That whoever is holding the rent gets to keep it. Or meaning that if the renter already paid the rent, then he doesn't get it back, even though the boat sank. And if the renter has not yet paid, the owner of the boat doesn't get paid the rent. So Hekidami, what's the situation? If I say that if the agreement is that this boat is going to carry wine and I don't specify which cargo of wine, well then imnasan, even if I gave the money, amilo yitol, why shouldn't I get it back? Because namely, I should be able to say as the renter, and Stan will be the boat owner. Stan, havli svinata, Svinta, give me another boat. Da'ana Maisina Chamra. I have more wine that I want to bring. And now, because Stan doesn't have another boat, he has to return my money to me. Oh, well, a second. So it can't be that that's a situation. So what about if I say, if the agreement is that we are going to have, that the agreement is going to be to provide a boat specifically for this wine? Well, then, imlo nasan, even if the renter didn't give, amai lo yitain, why shouldn't he have to pay as we turn to Ayin Tenem Bet? Because namely, the boat owner can say, Stan can tell me, Havli hahu chamra. You give me the wine that you wanted me to carry, va'ana maisina svinta, and I'll give you a boat. But you don't have the wine any longer. That wine is sunk on the bottom of the ocean. And so as a result, you can't, I've fulfilled my full side of the agreement, and you need to pay me because I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. So I'm Rapapa, lo mashkachala ela besfinazo v'yayinzeh. No, the situation is that it's this wine and this boat. And so as a result, neither of them can fulfill. So whoever's holding the money can say to the other, listen, bring me the wine that you agreed that I agreed to transport, and I'll go get you another boat. Or bring me the boat that you agreed to transfer, and I'll put other wine on it. So either way, whoever's holding the money gets to hold it because the other person is unable to fulfill their side of the bargain. What happens if nobody specifies the item? So it's just any boat and any wine. Well, then cholkin. Now that the boat has sunk with all the wine, so then they split the fee because each one of them can say, listen, bring me some of the object, and I'll take care of getting you the boat, or I'll take care of getting you the wine. And since neither of them can perform, we end up having to split it. Now, Rashi here suggests that in fact, what happens if one of them does have another boat or does have other wine? Well, then if they bring that boat item to the location, well, then the other person will have to pay them back for the full fee because they are ready to perform. So the question is always, Who's ready to perform? Is somebody ready to perform? If yes, that person's going to be the winner. If no, that person's going to be the loser. And if both are not ready to perform, well, then then the question is if it's about specific boat and specific wine, then the money's going to stay where it was, and if it's about unspecified, then they will split the difference. Okay.
Why is the owner not responsible for the wine that's lost?
Because these are the kinds of things that just happen. Nobody, there's no liability here. There's no fault associated with the situation. So that's the reason that there's not going to be any liability for the owner of the boat for its sinking. Not as if the boat sank because he did something wrong.
So it's an onus.
Exactly. It's an onus situation. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan, case number 2, case boat number 2. Socher as a svino faraka la b'chatzia derech. If you rent a boat and you take goods and you unload it halfway through the trip, nozin lo skaro chatzia derech. Well, then you have to pay the owner for half the trip. Ve'ein lo alav ela taromis, and the owner has no complaints against the rent. Has only complaints against the renter. He does not have any ability to claim additional money. Well, hey, Kidami, 1 second. What exactly is the situation? Because if the owner can find other people to lease the boat for the rest of the trip, amai isle taromas, why does he even have any kind of complaint? If he doesn't have anybody else to rent the boat to take the rest of the trip, the person who rented it should have to pay the entire fee. Why does he get a discount by deciding that he only wanted to go half the distance? Really, we could say that maybe the owner can find another renter. Why does he have a complaint? Because it weakens the boat. The constant loading and unloading will end up making the boat weaker, and so as a result, the person has damaged the boat relative to one long trip with one loading and unloading. Now he has 2 shorter trips with 2 loadings and unloadings, so that's worse. Well, 1 second, that seems to be a very good claim. He should actually get paid for his damages. He should get paid for that. Elamai praka. So as a result, we're going to change our answer and we're going to say, what does it mean to have removed to unloaded it? It means that he unloaded additional cargo into the boat. It's unloaded from the port. And so as a result, elamai taromis. Well, now what's the complaint? After all, you hired it to go from place A to place B. You may have stopped in the middle to load some additional stuff, but why do you need, what's the concern? So mishum shinoi data. Either it's because of changed expectations, meaning, as Rashi says, Hayiti sabur lelekas maher v'laksor maher. I expected that this trip would take a certain amount of time and be pretty quick. But now that you are loading it and unloading it in a new port, in multiple ports, that's changing my expectation. Inami la'ashla yisera. Or maybe because now it's a heavier boat than I would have expected, as Rashi explains, that I'm going to need to travel in the middle of the channel in order to be able to have the boat not scrape along the bottom. And that means that the ropes that are often in rivers, what would happen is you would have ropes to the 2 coasts of the river, and animals, or to one of the coasts of the river, and animals would take the boat and pull the boat along, and that's how you would the transport would happen. Well, now that I have to have this boat in a deeper part of the river, I need more rope. So as a result, that was an expectation that I didn't have. And yes, if I would have known about this ahead of time, I could have gotten the rope for less money in my home port. Now I'm already traveling, and so as a result, that's why I have a complaint. But at the end of the day, it's it's a complaint because we failed to fully clarify the situation ahead of time. So
who's the complaint? The complaint of the owner, or the complaint of the renter?
The owner is the one who's complaining. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan, case number 3. Now we go back to donkeys. I rent a donkey to ride on it. maniach ala so the renter can put his own clothing on the animal. In addition to, again, he's riding it, but he can also have the donkey hold his own clothing. So his flask, umizonos, his food, shall osa der. For that trip, you can't put food for 3 trips. You can't put food for 10 other people. You can put your food for your trip. Mikan ve'elach, but anything more than that, chamar ma'akavala. The donkey driver can say, listen, you can't do that. You're going to slow down the animal. You're going to hurt the animal. Chamar maniach alav, and what can the donkey driver do? He can put on it se'orim v'teven. He can put the food for the animal, mizonosav shall also hayom, and his own food. Mikan ve'elach socher ma'akev alav. Well, from anything more than that, the renter can stop him. Why can the renter stop him? Because the renter doesn't want the animal to be slowed down either. So, hey, Chidami. Now, what's the case exactly? Because if it's easy to find food, why can't the donkey owner also prevent the donkey driver, also prevent the other party from putting on more than one day's worth of food? And and if it's not easy to find food, the renter shouldn't be able to prevent the driver from bringing his own food. So Amarav Papa Lo Tricha. We have to say it's the following: the shkiach lamitra, where it is easy to, you can find the food lamizban to buy from when you go from one inn to the next every night. But chamar darke lemitrach lemizban. But the custom is that the donkey driver does that. He knows how to negotiate with the innkeepers, and so he's going to not have any problem getting the food. But socher lav darke lemitrach lemizban. But it's the renters. That's not his custom. He doesn't do that on a regular basis, and so as a result, we're not going to force him to engage in those transactions. Okay, let's finish up the daf with case number 4. If you rent a donkey for a man to ride, lo tirkav ala isha. Your woman can't ride on it. Now, this is obviously, it's not clearly about the weight, because usually men weigh more than women. But if a person who's riding it is experienced in the riding, it weighs less than a person who's not experienced it. And you can. This is something that we see all the time when we talk about picking up a child. If you're picking up a child who is fighting and is uncomfortable in your arms, that is going to weigh way more than a child who is, for example, asleep or otherwise just relaxed in your arms, because that's just a lot easier. So as a result, because women are not at that time, were not accustomed to riding on animals, so you have to be explicit when you say that you're going to rent a donkey, that you're renting it for a woman. But isha, if you say that you're going to rent for a woman, rochev ala ish, then a man can ride on it, because again, he will feel lighter for the donkey. The isha, and if you say a woman, ben gedola, ben ketana. It doesn't matter whether she's big or small, afilu muberes, even if she's pregnant, vafilu menika, and even if she's nursing. Well, 1 second. Hashta menika amra. Once you tell me that if she's nursing, well, that implies that she's taking the baby with her. So if the baby outside of her is going to be something that is allowed to be on the animal, muberes mi boy, do you need to tell me about a pregnant woman? Of course, the pregnant woman could be able to is included in the hiring for a woman. So Amar Papa Mumberes Vehimonekis Manika Kamar. No, we're talking about a pregnant woman who's also nursing. So and why do we need to tell me about the nursing? Because otherwise we would think we just mean pregnant. By telling us pregnant and even nursing, what we mean is pregnant and even if the pregnant woman is nursing. That's what we're saying. So Amar Abaye Shma Mina, we learn from this Benisa Akarsa Tikla, that based on the belly, that's the weight of the fish. So if in fact you see a bigger belly, you probably have a heavier fish. So Gemara wonders, Lamai Nafkamina, who cares about the bellies and fish? So that this is teaching you important business principles. So Rashi explains, last Rashi on Ayin Tet, and with that we'll close. Imra ita dag, if you see a fish, shekiriso gadol, that has a big tummy, Lo tikanuhu b'mishkal. Don't fix the weight associated with that. Don't buy that fish. Ella imkain yosi es me'av. They need to remove the insides, because maybe those insides are probably something that you do not want to eat. It's not the flesh of the fish. It's probably some kind of growth or intestines or something icky that you're not going to want. So make sure to take that out before you buy your fish. All right, so that is the conclusion of this Gemara. And if you're enjoying this discussion of animal rentals, stay tuned for more tomorrow as we pick up with the Mishnah at the top of Hey Amud Aleph. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.